So welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Matt. It's great to have you on the show.
Cleanne, it's good to be here. It's been a while since we've spoken.
So tell the listeners about you.
Cleanne, I'm an accidental psychonaut. So I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. About 4 years ago, I had a chance to do a guided magic mushroom or psilocybin experience, and it completely changed the way I look and view at the world. I had these really profound insights. I got to reconnect with my mom, who passed when she was just 49, and it sent me in a deep dive. I went back to school and got a master's in neuroscience and psychology, and have really been exploring consciousness, looking at all these different psychedelic medicines and how they can help people, and then writing a book about that.
Excellent. So what does psychedelic means, Matt? What if somebody's watching this video and listening and they're like, what is he talking about? What is psychedelic?
So think about psychedelics as kind of mind and heart opening medicines. So there's a variety of them. That people might have heard of ketamine. It's the only legal psychedelic here in America. They might have heard about mushrooms or magic mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, ibogaine, bufo. There's really hundreds of different psychedelic medicines, but these are the ones that are kind of the most well known to people when they think about a psychedelic medicine.
Okay. And are they legal? All
Are
of
they
them
legal?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. So here in America, the only legal psychedelic outside of a clinical trial is ketamine, and that's an FDA-approved medicine, so legal in all 50 states. And while it was approved initially as an anesthesia, it's used off-label quite often for depression and anxiety. And then there are two drugs that the FDA has given breakthrough therapy designation to. One is called MDMA, or we might have known it as ecstasy when we were younger. And then the other one is psilocybin or magic mushroom. And those are both in the end of clinical trial processes, and MDMA should be legal within the next 2 years and psilocybin within the next 3. Beyond that, here in America, if you want to have a psychedelic experience, you have to fly somewhere else. So you can go to the Netherlands or Jamaica, Central or South America, Mexico, lots of options in those areas to experience this. And then the other way people find it is going underground, finding a practitioner in their area and doing it illegally. So part of the goal with my book, Psychedelics for Everyone, is just to provide information for people who are, however they find their way to the medicine, that they can have accurate, medically reviewed information to make the best possible choice for them.
Okay. So how does psychedelic affect the brain?
Okay. So it does a number of things. And think about we all have kind of we get into patterns of thinking, kind of ruts in our path. And behind the scenes, we have neurons that keep firing the exact same way. One of the things that psychedelics does is it helps our neurons fire in different ways, in ways that maybe we did when we were younger, and in many, many, many more ways than we normally fire. So in that way, it's creating these new neural connections, and that is helpful as we're trying to bring up new memories and get into new thinking patterns. It's going to quiet the default mode network. So think about this as that inner narrator in your head that's, oh, Cleanne, you're not good enough, or you did, this is bad, this is a problem, I'm so worried. It's going to quiet that narrator down. And once that is quiet, you can feel the anxiety and depressive thoughts kind of go away as that quiets down. So that's really powerful. It can then help us disassociate from our own bodies. So it helps us step away. It removes the me from me or the you from you. And that's helpful in pulling up subconscious thoughts. And then the final thing it does, it's really cool. Many patients and people who experience psychedelics say it helped connect them to a higher power, whatever that meant to them. And this higher power connection, this idea that we're not alone in this universe, can also be very calming and help relieve depressive thoughts and anxiety as well.
So would you say it's kind of like an out of body experience when you do take psychedelic?
Many people do report kind of an out-of-body experience. Absolutely. Ketamine, which we talked about again, is the only legal psychedelic. Yeah, many people say, I could see my body over there, and I'm over here. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. How is this happening? And I think with many different of these medicines, that type of experience can occur. Not just out of body, but also removing the I. So I'm no longer Matt, but I know who he is, but I'm this other thing. I'm connected to all things. Yeah, it's really, really a powerful experience.
Okay. So how
Mhm.
does psychedelic help with depression, anxiety, and trauma?
So we're not exactly sure is the answer. We know, like with ketamine, that's going to work with the glutamate system and how important that is in the brain. We know it can connect people to a higher power. We know it can help people connect to each other. We know um, it can remove the notion of shame, blame, and guilt. And that's when you think about things that have happened in your past, it's really hard to look at them without feeling one of those emotions when it's a traumatic or a challenging experience in your past. Well, getting to remove those and then look at that experience is incredibly powerful. Um, yeah, I know in my case, I've had things that I was mortified to even talk about that I was able then to relook, reclassify, and move on in a way that for decades I could not. Um, so when some combination of all of that is where the depression and anxiety either lessens or goes away. One super interesting statistic, and this it's almost mind-boggling to think about. So we know that MDMA trials have just finished. So they've done phase 3 clinical trials using people who have treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress disorder. So, Clan, picture veterans, picture first responders, picture victims of sexual assault, where nothing has worked. None of the pharmacology that's out there today or the talk therapy has not worked. 3 sessions with MDMA and 67% no longer qualify as having PTSD at all. 67%. That is an incredibly powerful number for efficacy. And yeah, you can see why that we need something else. There's millions of people living with PTSD here in America, and the existing options don't work. And here's an option that we are seeing works. The data shows it works. And the FDA, again, giving it breakthrough therapy designation is a great sign. And hopefully we'll have this legal within the next 2 years for all of our loved ones to be able to take advantage of.
Is it cheaper than antidepressants, or is
Oh,
it
that's a tricky question. So it's a tricky question because right now insurance covers antidepressants and insurance does not cover in most cases ketamine.
okay?
So it's super frustrating. So we have an access challenge where people who need this medicine can't afford it, and it's frustrating. So a lot of us in the industry are trying to find ways to get our data together and continue to present it to insurance companies so that they can understand. Look, it's going to be cheaper to have our people have a few sessions with ketamine and guides and doctors than it is to have a lifetime prescription to antidepressants and all the therapy that goes with it, in addition to all the other stuff. What's the cost to the quality of life for those people? When you talk about antidepressants, I mean, we're talking about 40% of the population, they just don't work.
Mhm.
And then the side effects, 75-ish% have sexual dysfunction. It's a big number. Gastrointestinal issues, suicidal ideation, weight gain. They're really tough drugs for a lot of people. So the side effect profiles for ketamine are very little, and most resolve when the medicine wears off. So it's an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time for mental health in America because we're going to see not just ketamine getting more and more and more use, but MDMA, psilocybin, and hopefully some of these other medicines coming out, becoming available, all within this upcoming decade.
Oh, sounds great. So how do
Mhm.
people prepare for a psychedelic session?
So we talk about 3 S's. We talk about source,
Mhm.
set, and setting. So the source is, where did the drugs come from? So if you're doing it in a medical setting, I'm going to a doctor who's prescribing me ketamine, you don't have to worry about the source. The source has been government approved. So that's
Mhm.
great. When you're going to a international retreat or to an underground retreat, you might want to ask some questions. Where do you get your medicine from? How do we know it is what it is? And certainly, and I don't ever recommend this, but if you are buying drugs yourself, there are organizations you go online that will test your drugs for you. So a lot of times, and I'll use MDMA as an example, people buy what they think is MDMA, And upwards of 50% of the time, there's no MDMA in it, none. So there's a lot of bad actors out there. And it's unfortunate we can't have an open and honest, transparent drug market here in America. But until we do, if you're buying drugs yourself, test them, get them tested. So that's all about your source. The next thing is set, which is your mindset. So hopefully when you're working with a skilled practitioner, again, it could be a medical provider, it could be a guide, they're going to help prepare you. That means they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you what to eat or not eat. They're going to check that you don't have any contraindications with any medicine you're taking. They're going to help you set your intention. Why are you here for this journey? They're going to tell you how long it's going to be and all of those things so that you are in just a good frame of mind going into the experience. So having that positive mindset, that clear mindset, I'm here because I'm looking for this. Okay, that's helpful. And then the last thing is setting. What is your physical location like? Are you in a place that you're not going to be interrupted? Are you in a place that you're not going to have any loud noises or sudden movements or bright lights? All of that is your setting. I take it a step further and talk about kind of the ceremony. Do you have a place where you can have some aromatherapy and some candles and some flowers and maybe an altar with things that are important to you, and you've treated this medicine with respect and you've brought that kind of intention to the process. But when you pay attention to your source, your set, and your setting, you're really, the probability of having a good experience is very, very high. And this is, again, not me just saying this. This is what the research says on how you prepare for a psychedelic experience.
Okay. So where would someone find a psychedelic retreat, if they want to go internationally or just stay right here in the US?
Yeah. So I have a whole chapter in my book about kind of the things to look for and ask for with a psychedelic retreat. But let me give a couple just tips for your listeners, Gleanne. You can certainly go online to things like Retreat Guru and look for plant medicine retreats and see what pops up. There's a bunch of them in Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, the Netherlands, Jamaica has a number of them. Maybe you know somebody who said, "Oh, we should go to sit with this person." Okay. No matter what you find, there's some questions you might want to ask. You might want to ask, how many people are going to be doing this medicine with me? So in my experience, I think kind of up to about 20 people is a really good small enough group. I think personally, I think the group experience is better for psychedelics than one-on-one. Just so that's just my personal experience. It also helps keep the cost down. But other people have philosophies that it should be 40, it should be 80. So it's really up to you to be an educated buyer and ask the question at your retreat, how many people are going to be there? Next question is, what is the experience of the facilitator? Where were they trained? What is their philosophy? Is this again, I'll use the ketamine example. There are ketamine providers that are really just anesthesiologists. You'll go in, they'll put an IV in your arm, you'll do your thing for an hour, and then they'll send you on your way after a recovery period. That's different. There are other ketamine providers who really believe that they want to prepare you. They want to have ceremony. They want to have you have a whole experience. And when you finish, they want to help integrate you back into your thoughts and the things that you've learned back into your 3D life. So the same medicine, just different philosophies. So ask, what are you as a provider going to do for me or not do? And then what are you as the person who's choosing to do this? What are you looking for? Do you want it to be more just about a chemical reaction, or are you looking for more of a ceremonial experience? And no right or wrong, no bad anybody, just different philosophies. Let me see here. And then also we've talked about where's the medicine from, and then all of the normal. One other question is a good one to ask is just what do you have on site medically? What's interesting about psychedelics is they're much safer than other medicines. So it's typically not going to be an issue with the medicine that causes a problem. The issue is just life happens. We're all getting older and things happen. And when things happen, when we're in a non-ordinary state of consciousness, it's just more complicated. So, okay, what are you going to do if something happens? Is there a nurse on staff? Is there a nurse nearby? Do you have a relationship with a medical organization? What do you do? and just at least hear if they've thought at all about this. And then decide, okay, yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable, or I don't expect to have an issue, or maybe this is not an organization that's thought enough about this, and I don't want to entrust myself to them. Because when you take a psychedelic, especially again, ketamine is only 1 hour, but if you go and do a psilocybin or an ayahuasca or an ibogaine, we're talking about many, many, many hours, and you're in a very vulnerable state for that period. So you want to know that you're going to be in good hands and not have to worry about that during that process.
Okay. So what are the rumors about psychedelic medicine?
Mm. There are a number of rumors, Clan. Any of us born after there, so there's the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 that was passed during the Nixon administration. So any of us born after 1971, we have lived our entire lives in a prohibition that we didn't know was there. So any of us who lived through like the 70s and 80s, we saw the ads, the Just Say No campaign with the frying pan and an egg, and this is your brain, and this is your brain on drugs, and all drugs are bad, and there's no medical use, and you're going to get addicted. And that's what we were told. I bought into it. I didn't do drugs because I was terrified. It turns out that campaign wasn't based on science. That campaign was based on politics. That campaign came because they wanted to infiltrate Black civil rights activists, and they wanted to quiet down the anti-war movement. They wanted to incarcerate a lot of people, but it wasn't because the science was showing that this was true. Well, fast forward to today, over 300 academic institutions are now studying psychedelic medicine. And we know the data is saying, wow, look what this can do for depression. Look what this can do for anxiety. Look what this can do for post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD, eating disorders, substance use, on and on. There's no question. And then on the addiction side, most psychedelics are anti-addictive. It's not like what we're used to, where you start taking a medicine, you want to take it every day. It's not how these work. So yeah, so I think that is the number one thing, is that we've been fed a bunch of lies, all of which aren't true. And we need to those are all myths. We're not going to get addicted. There are medical uses, and there's yeah, a lot of good and power here.
So how long can someone be on psychedelics?
So when you say how long can somebody be, I mean, there are people who have used psychedelic medicines for decades and decades and decades, because in many cases, they're only doing it once a year, once every couple of years, once every few years. There are other people who do it once a quarter, and there are people who do it once a month. And of course, there are people who do it more than that. But none of this is every day. I think the bigger question when it comes to psychedelics is how long can you feel the effects? And what the research shows is, in many people, their first psychedelic experience becomes one of the 5 or 10 most important things that's ever happened to them. As important as getting married, having children, the death of a parent. It's that profound of a life experience. And when you think about how long those other things can stay with somebody, you can imagine, yeah, well, if I had one of those top 5 experiences, that's going to stick with me for a long time. What I often tell people is, look, it's not the psychedelic itself is not the cure. It's a catalyst. It helps open up the mind. It helps you think about things differently. But then you have to do the work of, how am I going to remember what I was shown today, tomorrow, the day after? And how do I keep that and keep that awareness around me, keep that presence in me, and move forward with my life? So you can feel the experience for quite a while is the answer, Clean.
Okay. So tell the listeners a little bit about your book, and what are the readers going to expect from this book?
Yeah. So Clean, I finished my first psychedelic experience, I was like, wow, I don't know the secret handshake to understand this world. What just happened? So I wanted to do a quick, not a quick, I wanted to do a deep dive, and get a scientific background underneath me. So I jumped back into school and got this master's in the psychology and neuroscience and mental health. And meanwhile, continue down this journey, trying to learn as much as I can. This book is my attempt to share that with the readers, for people who don't have a scientific background, and in a way that's not too technical or too opinionated or too woo-woo. So anybody can read it. It's it starts with four very personal stories about how psychedelics have impacted me. It then moves into kind of an overview of psychedelics as a whole. And then after that, it goes into the eight most widely known psychedelic medicines and does a deep dive into those. What does the research say? What are things you should be aware about? How are these medicines used? And my hope is that any reader with any level of understanding can come in and say, okay, I get this. Maybe psychedelics are for me, maybe they're not, but I can see how they could be helpful for this person that I know or that person that I know, or maybe this will change the way I'm going to vote for in an upcoming election.
Okay. And this is the first time I have ever spoken about psychedelics. I've ever heard about psychedelics.
Hmm.
So this is, to me, this is like brand new information for my brain. And it's such an honor to have you on there, Matt, to talk about that. And where can the listeners get a copy of your book? And do you have any last words for the listeners?
Sure, and Clan, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know this is a topic that's foreign to you, and I appreciate you saying, well, let's bring this on. I think there are people in my community who might benefit from this or who might want this information. So the book is called Psychedelics for Everyone. It's available everywhere that books are sold. I have an audio book that came out just a few weeks ago, and the audiobook's fun. It has Dr. Carlos Warder, who's an MD, PhD, read the forward, and then I do all the parts that I wrote. And then there's a woman named Leslie Howard that reads all the parts that women wrote in the book.
Mhm.
And people can go to mattzemon.com, Zemon.com. And there's a bunch of different videos where they can learn a little bit about different psychedelic medicines. And then I'm always available on LinkedIn and Instagram, and happy for anyone who has any questions to answer and be of help of any way I can. So I want to be of service. Don't be shy. I'm absolutely willing and desiring of your questions. So let me know how I can help.
Well, thank you, Matt, for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
Clan, thank you for having me.